Good evening. Good evening. I am Deacon Andrea LaBoo, and I'm here with my husband,
Deacon Hayward LaBoo.
Nice to be with you. We want to welcome you to the Link Couples Ministry. Remember, Link Couples meets the third Tuesday of every month. We want you to like, share, whatever you guys do on Facebook and Instagram and whatever else is out there. We want you to come join us this evening, share it with your friends, and let them know that Link Couples Ministry is meeting this on third Tuesday of the month. Well, tonight we want to talk just briefly about negotiating differences in a relationship. And how do you do that? What does that mean? We are very different. I guess just to give you a little bit of background, we have been married for, okay, I should know this, 36 years, I think. Dated for 7, so 42 years altogether. So we started dating when I was in 18 or 19, and now I'm about to collect Social Security. So it truly has been a lifetime. But we want to welcome you to just this brief discussion on how do you negotiate differences in a relationship? How do you compromise and not feel like you're giving up of yourself? Or how do you negotiate and compromise in a relationship where both parties feel heard, both parties feel loved, and both parties feel appreciated? So I thought we'd start, because we always talk about how do we do this in relationship. The first thing we want to do is just cover it in prayer and scripture. And I found a scripture that I thought would be helpful to us. Luke 11:17 says, "Any kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and a house divided against itself will fall."
Amen.
So this is why negotiation is really important. This is why compromise is really important. As a couple, you want to present a united front. It's not like you have to agree all the time or be in sync all the time, because we are two very different people. Very different people.
Absolutely.
You have anything to
I
say?
know. I was going to say that when we first entered into our marriage, one of the concerns that I always had was, would I lose my identity in this relationship? Because my wife has a very strong personality, and I tend to be a lot more quiet. But
Okay.
but we've had to learn how to appreciate each other's differences, and we're still learning how to communicate and to communicate our needs from each other.
Yeah. It is true. I mean, we do have very different personalities. My husband he's a negotiator. He is a peacemaker. He is the person you want to call in to negotiate a conflict. I'm a Peter. I will cut your ear off, call Jesus, line on Jesus and say, aisle 2, clean up because somebody's ear's on the floor. But that is actually a way of, it's like yin and yang. You complement each other. So it's not like you have to be the same, or we expect each other to be the same, but you want to make sure that we respect each other's differences. So go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say the important thing I think to remember is that it's always important that you do communicate your needs, especially if your needs are different from each other. That it's important that you do communicate it. Now, how we communicate it may be very different. I know that with my wife, she tends to be a person that needs to discuss it right here, right now, whereas I will be a person that will tend to want to wait. I need to take a little time to think it over and then bring my thoughts and my feelings to the table. But so we've even had to have an agreement as to when are we going to bring it to when are we going to sit down and to talk about an issue, because I may not be quite ready at that particular moment to express what I'm feeling. At that moment, I may need a little time, because sometimes, to be honest with you, I'm not always quite sure of what I'm feeling. I know that I'm having feelings, but I don't know how to kind of put that into words. So,
but I think part of that is, men and women tend to process differently. I hope that's not a sexist statement, but I process out loud, and sometimes you process in your head, and it's sort of like a computer, out comes the answer. So one of the things in negotiating differences is learning your communication style. We talked previously about some people are lemons and some people aren't, and that we just have to be not responsible, but respectful of what the person can offer, but also keep the other person accountable. Like when we decide decide, okay, we can't talk about this right now, or he can't talk about it right now. Okay, when are we coming back to it? Okay, in a reasonable time. And he says, okay, can we talk about it tomorrow after I get home from work? Okay, that's written in stone. That means tomorrow after you get home from work, we're going to finish the discussion. So
Because I think that sometimes you need to have that space. Sometimes time and space gives you a little bit of perspective, and it helps you to come back and to talk about difficult issues. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with sometimes sleeping on it. Sleeping on it sometimes gives me a different perspective.
now that's not going to bed angry. We need to be clear on that.
No, it's not going to bed angry.
You don't want the sun. We say don't want the sun to go down on your wrath. What you can do is agree to disagree in that moment. So you end with the premise. Okay, I love you. I honor you. I respect you. We're going to talk about this at another time when we can both come to it with our clear mind, clear thought, and clear understanding of what we both need in that particular point. So.
And I think you just hit a good point, sweetie.
Oh, I got called sweetie.
I think that you said a key word, which is respect. Do we respect each other? And I think that goes back to then, part of the question that brings up is, well, do we value each other's differences? And God has made us uniquely wonderful, as Bishop preached about this morning. But He's made us uniquely different, but still uniquely wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I think that even though there may be areas where we may differ, we still have to. I think it's still important that we value each other's differences. God has made us helpmates to each other.
Yeah.
And what I bring to the table is going to be very different than what my wife brings to the table.
Yeah.
But I have to value what she brings. And sometimes in the spirit of the moment, because I want to be heard and because I want to get my thoughts out there, sometimes I may not necessarily value that person's value my wife's offerings at that moment. But that's where I think having the opportunity to kind of sleep on it, I think sometimes makes me remember that even though my thoughts might be different than her thoughts, I value what she brings to the table, because I have to remember I asked God for a helpmate. I asked God for somebody who's going to support my dreams and my visions. And even though we may not always see eye to eye on how do we get there, what she brings to the table is very important.
Yeah.
So I have to appreciate that.
You got to value my offerings.
That's what I do. And I do value your offerings.
Which is good. So one of the things, we have put together like a list of 6 things that we could talk about in terms of how do you negotiate differences in a relationship. And that was actually one of the first things. Do you value each other's differences? We're all different. And it comes with a mutual respect of what everybody brings to the table. It has nothing to do with being right, wrong, or whatever. It's like, what is this person bringing to the table? And I have to respect that and honor that, even though it may be very different. As I said before, we communicate differently. We handle things differently. I'm the Peter and he's the peacemaker, so we sort of balance each other somewhere in the middle. The other thing is that, and this is going to be probably a touchy one for us, do you wonder, is it okay if I'm not right all the time? Okay, although I am right most of the time.
And part of my answer to that is that I just allow her to be right all the time.
Good answer. Allow me to be right all the time, and it would be good. But do we have to fight that battle? What is it that you're really trying to get? Is it more important to feel valued, respected, or is it more important to feel right? Right sends up this message that we're in a battle with each other. One of the things I often talk to people about, I'm not your enemy. I'm not your enemy. We are on the same side.
Right.
So being right is not important. Being right and proving that point is not always important. Now, don't get me wrong. Okay. Sometimes we all want to say, told you, and that's not what we want to do. but we want to make sure that we hear the thoughts, the desires, the concerns of the other person, as opposed to just sticking to the point is I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right.
No, I agree.
So and that's hard. That's hard because if you're a person that likes to feel validated, a lot of times when we feel unvalidated or we don't feel confident in ourselves, we need to stick up and say, I'm right, and come out with that horn and say, I'm going to be the one to lead the charge.
And I think that, it's important to realize that, yeah, you might be right, but in your efforts to be right, have you heard the other person's feeling? Have you heard the other person's what's really motivating them? Have you really heard what they're thinking?
Yep.
Have you really heard what hurts them?
Yep. So are you spending more time trying to be right as opposed to listening to your partner's heart?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because if you spend that time focusing on what's right, you can totally miss what's coming from your person's heart and coming from your partner's heart and what they're really trying to say. And then what wounds they've decided to share with you that you have to take care of and not be right about. So you can miss all of that just by trying to be right in a relationship. Would you agree?
I would agree.
Okay. All right. The other thing is that we ask, am I open to learning new things? We talked about how you can, I don't want to miss anything by trying to be right, but am I open to learning new things? No matter how old we get, we can always learn something new. We can always learn something new in terms of how we relate to each other. We can learn something from each other. So am I open to learning the information and knowledge that my partner may bring or my husband, my wife may bring to me? Once again, am I trying to prove a point? But can I listen to what the other person is saying?
I think that kind of goes back to, are you willing to learn something new? I mean, are you willing to learn something new about me? And am I willing to learn something new about you?
Mm-hmm.
Not just the factual things, but emotional things.
Yeah.
What causes you to be so angry? Where does that anger come from? What causes you to be, so loving? Sometimes if you listen, you can get insight into that, and you can get insight into, what makes you the person that you are.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing when you have a better understanding of who your husband or wife is.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's good, and that sounds good. He's a therapist. I don't necessarily function like that all the time. Sometimes, it's hard when you feel as if you're trying to get something across to someone, or trying to teach them something, or trying to say something to them, and they're just not hearing it. They're just not hearing. So, and I think we all get frustrated with that. So what is it that we can do to make an almost like an agreement? We're here to learn from each other. I'm different now than I was at 18, and you are different now than you were 18, 19. So you have to get to know your partner, your husband, your wife at every stage of where you are. So are we learning something new about how we process things differently? There may be things now that I may have gotten excited about years ago. Now I'm like, it's no big deal. Let it go. So you can't assume that the person's always the same and that and so you have nothing new to learn.
mm-hmm.
So when you're open to that, you're open to growth in your relationship, because relationships, we've talked before, you grow apart, you grow together, you go apart, you go together. The work is keeping that pull back, coming back together. And that's learning from each other.
Absolutely.
Which changes. So what else do you think we can do in terms of putting our needs aside, things like that, in terms of helping the person get their needs met, opening their hearts to you? This is serious stuff. It can be serious stuff.
Absolutely.
So what do you think what can we do to better meet the needs of our person as our partner, our husband or wife, as we're trying to get a negotiating process going? Am I in the mood or in thinking of trying to get my needs met, or I am in the mood or in the process of just trying to negotiate a deal? What do you think about that?
I'm not sure.
Did I confuse you?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question. Say it again. Say
Well,
it
I'm
one
trying
more
to
time.
say when you put your needs aside and you put your needs, there has to be a willingness to put your needs aside sometimes in a negotiating a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes through communication. That comes through really hearing the other person's heart, not the issue. And it's hard sometimes to get to that point where, okay, the person may be presenting an issue to you, but the heart is what's really speaking. So you have to get to the emotion behind the behavior, if that makes sense.
I think I'm not sure that I'm answering your question, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that a part of it is loving that person enough that their needs become more important than your needs.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and we all have needs. That's natural. I think that sometimes though we have to learn to put aside what it is that we need at that moment because the other person is more important to us.
That's big though.
That's
difficult.
To me, that's a God thing.
Oh, see, there he goes.
No. I just mean God so loved the world that he gave his only
That's true.
begotten son.
That's true.
You know, I think that we have to sometimes be able to put our needs aside for someone else.
Yeah.
And the whom else other than your spouse, your mate, your partner, that you should be putting your needs aside for someone else. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that
I think I'm gonna cut you off. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I think that makes sense. I think it makes logical sense. I just think sometimes it's very difficult to do.
Difficult to do.
And I think you gave a perfect example. God gave us an example of that.
Yes, he
He
did.
wanted to meet our needs so much that he gave his son to us.
That's
So
right.
that's the golden rule, what we should shoot for, but it's really difficult to do when somebody's got you really upset.
But putting your own needs aside, giving up your own pride because of for someone else.
I think that's a
giving
good
up
point.
your own anger in order to hear what somebody else is going through.
Yeah.
I mean, I think putting aside your own feelings for a moment, can't do that continually, but to do that for a moment in that moment of time because your needs are more important. Your needs are more important.
Yeah.
I think is important in a healthy relationship.
And I think the key for me in that putting the other person's needs important goes back to listening to that person's wound, listening to that person's heart, and realizing that we all have wounds, we all have stuff. And is this the wound talking, or is this the person just trying to get their point across? And really taking a moment once again to listen to the emotion behind the behavior. What's driving the emotion? Now, this comes with, I think, comes with maturity. It comes with practice, and practice. Because it's difficult sometimes to sit there and think, and I'll be the person, that's not always first on my mind. I'm going to put my needs aside so you can meet yours. It doesn't happen that way. But when you see your partner struggling, when you see your husband struggling, you see your wife struggling, hopefully there should be a tug on a heartstring, and you can say, okay, fine, this person that I love is hurting. And what can I do to make that pain go away? And that's what we should be doing, and that's what God modeled for us.
Absolutely.
What can we do to make that pain go away? So I guess one of the other things that we can do, and once again, this comes with practice and 40-something years together. Can we negotiate our differences with a spirit of love and respect? I'm going to say that one again. Can we negotiate our differences with a spirit of love and respect? Now, what do you think about that?
I think that idealistically that's what we are taught to do and what we ought to do. I know that in practice it does not always come out that way. I know my wife and I we've had bitter arguments, and in those bitter arguments sometimes love and respect doesn't always come through, at least not initially. If you want to keep it real, it doesn't always come through initially.
I'm on my last
My wife and my wife is a very opinionated person, and I have my own thoughts and feelings about things. So it doesn't always and expressing it doesn't always come across initially with respect or with love. Now I'm just being truthful. But at the end of the day, when we're able to take that time to kind of put everything in perspective, and to realize that this person is the person that God has placed in my life, who loves me, who cares about me, even though it may not always feel that way initially.
Yeah.
When I take the time to put that into perspective, then I have to understand that I have to respect this woman, because this is the gift that God has given me. And at the end of the day, I want to be a good steward of the gift that God has given me.
Yeah.
So, and that includes taking care of her feelings, acknowledging her feelings, valuing her feelings and thoughts. And I'm not always good at it, but I try to be as thoughtful and mindful of that, because at the end of the day, that's what God has placed. Why God has placed her in my life.
And because I know we have to get ready to wind down, but I think just to reiterate what you said, we're not always perfect at it. We're not. But if you're willing to do or willing to try, that's what makes the difference, and that's what in my opinion, keeps relationships going. I am willing to hang in there and try and keep working and working and working. And then coming from the basic premise of, I love and I respect this person. God has blessed me with my partner, blessed me with my wife, blessed me with my husband. What am I doing to nurture this other person's heart? So when we talk about getting through difficult times, we talk about how do we actually negotiate a difficult situation, how do we get through conflict, you start right there. I'm not your enemy. I love and I respect you, and I am here to listen to your heart. I'm listening to your heart. And I think when we can start with that and make that the foundation of what we do, not that it's easy, not because we have very different personalities, but what happens is it settles you and it gives you the framework to which building the negotiation or building the conversation on. And this is how you move forward, by not putting stuff underneath the carpet. We're going to talk about it. We're going to settle it. We're going to model for our children how we deal with conflict. So I just wanted to say, we have to wind down. But I saw this quote, and it says, a true partnership occurs when we are open, expand our ideas, loosen our rigid expectations, and compromise with a spirit of kindness, openness, and love. Which means there's going to be conflict, but if we do it in a way, we have negotiations, whatever we want to call them, start with a spirit of kindness, start with a spirit of openness, and start with a spirit of love, that you can probably get through most anything.
And remember that a kingdom divided is ruined.
Yeah.
And a house divided will fall.
So,
and we are one. We are the house.
Yeah.
You are the house.
Yeah. Bishop talked about that. We are the temple.
That's right.
We are the temple.
So, again, if you're divided, you will fall.
Yeah. And just trust and pray, trust God. We're going to wind down, but I just wanted to go through, since I'm a trainer person, just go through the 6 things that we talked about in terms of how to get through a difficult time. Ask yourself, do I value our differences? Is it okay if I'm not right all the time? Am I open to learning something new? Number 4, am I able to compromise on a regular basis? Not on that rare occasion, but it just becomes a natural part of who we are as a couple. Can I put my needs aside to meet the needs of my partner? Can we negotiate our differences with a spirit of love and respect? So I thought we did good today. That's good. All right. My Peter stayed in. I'll have to cut your ear off. So we thank you for joining us this evening on Link Couples Ministry. Remember, the ministry Link Couples means the 3rd Tuesday of every month. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, and whatever else you guys do. I think that's it. But thank you for sharing your time with us. We hope that this has been a pleasure, and we hope we've been helpful. We will keep you in our prayers, and please do the same for us. God bless.